Okay, this week for part 3 of relations, the last part, we are going to look at zeros and intercepts. So we are looking at where the graph crosses the x-axis, and we're going to look at either where it crosses the x-axis or the y-axis, depending on what the question asks us. So the first thing we need to look at is x-intercept. An x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So if we look at this picture, we've got our x-axis, we know, is this horizontal axis. And sorry, I'm not very good at drawing a straight line. But this is our x-axis. So what we're doing is we're looking for where does the graph cross that line. So if I follow my blue graph, it crosses the red line right here, and that's at -2. So our x-axis, or I'm sorry, our x-intercept would be at the point -2, 0. And what we always want to remember is that if we're looking for the x-intercept, when we write our point, we should always have a 0 in the y spot, because we're saying then that the point does not go off the x-axis. It's staying down there at 0, and it's only moving left or right. For the y-intercept, we're looking at where the graph crosses the y-axis. And so our y-axis is our vertical axis, the one going up and down. And again, just like the x-intercept, we're going to follow our graph, follow it from left to right, just like we're reading a book, and we're looking for where does it cross the vertical axis, the y-axis. And I see it crosses through this point right here at 4. So if I write that as a coordinate point, I have 0, 4. So this is opposite now of the x-intercept. So for y-intercept, we should have a 0 in the place of the x, because we're not moving left or right. And think about, we're only wanting to know the y, so we should only have a number in the y spot. So zeros, this is the last thing, and zeros is just the same thing as the x-intercept. You may also hear this called roots or solutions. So anytime you hear what are the zeros, or what are the roots, or what are the solutions, you're just finding what is the x-intercept. They're just trying to trick you by giving you different words. So if we look at an example, it says, what is the zeros of the graph below? So zeros is the same thing as x-intercepts. So I'm looking for where does the graph cross the x-axis. So if I follow my x-axis, highlight right here the horizontal line. If I then follow my blue graph left to right to where it crosses that line, it is right here at 3. So the zeros of the graph is at 3. Or if it asks what is the x-intercept, we would write it as 3, 0. We're putting that number in the spot of x and leaving y as 0. If you're given an equation and asked to find the x and y intercepts, or the zeros, we're going to do the same thing, but we're just going to take our equation and we're going to type it in Desmos. So I'm going to take y equals 4x plus 4 and go to my Desmos calculator and type the same thing, y equals 4x plus 4. And Desmos is really awesome because it puts points on the x-axis and the y-axis of where your intercepts are. So you just have to figure out which one is the x and which one is the y. And hopefully you remember that the x-intercept is the horizontal line. So my x-intercept is right here at -1, 0. My y-intercept, if I follow the y-axis, is right here at 0, 4. So if you click on those points, it will actually come up with the actual answer. So for number 1, my x-intercept was at -1, 0, and my y-intercept was at 0, 4. And so now same thing with my second graph. So you take a second and type it into Desmos and see what you get for the x and y intercept. So if I type this in, y equals negative 2x plus 5, I see here I've got a point here and a point here. So my x-intercept is down here on my horizontal line at 2.50, and my y-intercept is up here at 0.5. And one thing I want to show you, sometimes you may have multiple choice answers, and they may not be written as decimals. And so what you're going to do if that is the case, and your answer though on your graph like this gives you a decimal, all you're going to do is come back over here and type that decimal in. So I'm going to type in 2.5. Click the button on the left here that looks like a fraction, and that's going to turn it into a fraction for us. So if you ever come across that, you didn't do it wrong, you just need to change your decimal into a fraction. So we have y-intercept, and our x-intercept was at 2.50, or we could write it with that fraction as 5/2, and the y-intercept was at 0.5. So here's a harder question that you might see. Which functions have exactly 1, 0? So we have to figure out what is this asking us? Well, a 0 is an x-intercept. So this is asking us which of these functions have one x-intercept. So which of these is only crossing through the x-axis one time? So if I highlight my x-axis, well, for this first one, we can see that this graph doesn't even touch the x-axis, so that's wrong. If I highlight the x-axis here and follow my graph, I cross through one time there, and that's it. So one time, yes. Highlight this x-axis. I follow the curve, I go through one time here, and I come back through, so that's not right because I'm only looking for one time. This one, I cross through right at the very beginning of my graph, so that's a yes. Here, I'm crossing through one time here, so that's 2 times, so that's a no. And down here, I'm exactly touching this at one spot on the bottom of that graph. So this one does actually count. If it touches it, it counts. Last one. So what is the x-intercept of the following function? F of x equals 8x plus 16. So over here you see that I have a little sticky note saying f of x is the same thing as y. So we can actually rewrite this and get rid of f of x and make this say y equals 8x plus 16. So I can go and type that in Desmos. Delete this. Y equals 8x plus 16. And now look and see, here's my x-intercept, pops right up for me, -2, 0. So my answer would be -2, 0. And you're done.